Welcome to another edition of Daily Airline News, focusing on the loss of Air India Flight 171. I am Geoffrey Thomas, and I'm delighted to say joined by my co-host Richard Godfrey in Frankfurt. Good morning to you, Richard.
And good afternoon to you, Geoffrey.
You. Uh, Viewers, this episode is Diversion. It's episode 238. Now, we said we were taking the day off, but then something happened that changed our minds. This is a short episode with an update on a diversion of an Air India Boeing 787-8. But before I ask Richard to give us an update, just a word. Please subscribe to us. Please like us. Please keep those wonderful comments coming and those fantastic questions. And again, I do urge you to subscribe to us, because coming up soon is the resumption of the search for MH370, and we're going to be covering that on a daily basis. So you won't want to miss that. It promises to be a really fascinating search. But let's get back to Air India 171, and in particular, the diversion. Richard, can you give us an overview of what happened?
Yeah, well, Air India Flight 154 from Vienna to Delhi on the 9th of October 2025 was diverted to Dubai. The aircraft, Boeing 787-8, registration VTANC, diverted after 5 hours of flight to Dubai. As I mentioned, the aircraft continued after 3 hours, 32 minutes on the ground in Dubai, arriving safely in Delhi at 0641 UTC on the 10th of October. And according to Air India, this was due to a technical issue. That's all they said. According to the Federation of Indian Pilots, this was due to an autopilot disconnect, and a number of systems failed or degraded. And what we know for sure is the aircraft diverted to Dubai. That's on Flight Radar 24 and on Flight Aware. Following the RAT deployment of VTANO on landing in Birmingham Airport on the 4th of October, this incident now on the 9th of October, diverting to Dubai Airport, increases public concern for the safety of Air India. And we plan further investigation into the Air India Boeing 787-8 fleet maintenance, going back 3 years into the flight records and maintenance records.
Richard, any ideas on how the Federation of Indian Pilots know that a number of systems failed or degraded?
Yeah, the FIP represents professional pilots, including those flying for Air India, or some of the pilots flying for Air India. It is common practice for pilots involved in an abnormal event to report it confidentially to their union or federation, and soon after landing, and particularly when they feel the public explanation, technical issue, is too vague. And these reports can include information from crew debriefings, or ACARS or flight deck logbook notes, post-flight technical write-ups describing which systems malfunctioned or degraded. And if one or both of the operating pilots were FIP members, or if this incident was discussed amongst colleagues immediately afterward, then the Federation may well have received a first-hand account of the sequence of events. And the FIP often maintains informal communication channels with maintenance engineers and technical pilots and safety representatives. And if the maintenance team in Dubai or later in Delhi performed some troubleshooting, they might have informally conveyed the multiple systems flagged or degraded status from the central maintenance computer, the CMC. such as autopilot or flight control laws or electrical buses. And this could easily lead the Federation wording to a number of systems failed or degraded.
Yeah. And of course, every airline's aircraft carries an aircraft maintenance log, an AML, or a tech log, in which flight crew record all in-flight faults. Well, they're supposed to.
Yeah. And FIP representatives occasionally receive access to anonymized extracts, especially if a safety concern affects crew operations. The entry for this diversion would list the ECAM and ICAS messages or advisory faults seen in flight. And if multiple systems were listed, for example, autopilot disconnect or electrical bus one fail or flight control primary computer fault, the FIP would legitimately characterize that as a number of systems degraded. And under the India's CAR Section 5 Series C Part 1 mandatory occurrence reporting, flight crews must file a safety occurrence report within 72 hours. And the FIP may have learnt the contents of such a report through members who are copied or involved in the submission process.
Mm. So, given the recent FT-ANO RAT deployment on the 4th of October 2025 at Birmingham, the FIP may have been actively monitoring similar events on the Air India 787 fleet because they've been calling for it to be grounded, haven't they?
Yes, they have, and I'm quite sure they are monitoring similar events on the Air India fleet. And when VTANC diverted, citing a technical issue after 5 hours of cruise, it would naturally raise questions. And if the crew mentioned loss or degradation of key automation, then FIP would view this as consistent with a power distribution or flight control stability issue, hence their statement.
Mm.
And when VTANO, meanwhile, has flown every day since the Birmingham RAT deployment incident on the 4th of October. On the 5th of October, it flew back to Delhi, the 6th and 7th to Paris and back, on the 8th, 9th, and 10th to Seoul and back twice. And today it's flying to Milan and scheduled to fly back tomorrow. And VTANC is scheduled to fly to Melbourne and back tomorrow. So we'll track the aircraft as well as the FIP.
I think a lot of people will be tracking Air India flights at the moment.
Yeah.
Um, yes. Now, what can cause an autopilot disconnect in flight? Perhaps you can elaborate for the viewers, Richard.
Yeah, well, there are six scenarios, and the most likely is scenario A, and the electrical power distribution or bus isolation fault. Scenario B is a common mode failure in the flight control or inertial reference systems. Scenario C, air data or angle of attack sensor disagreement. Scenario D, multiple flight control computer channel faults. Scenario E, avionics cooling or power supply problem. And the last one, scenario F, a fault in the Common Data Network, CDN, or the Common Core System, CCS.
Hmm. So, in your view, which scenario fits the FIP description best?
Well, I think scenario A, but quite frankly, all of the scenarios are possible. It's more likely A, B, or D. Scenario A fits very well, though. A fault in the left or right AC bus or an EPCS channel failure can trigger autopilot disconnect. Flight control law degradation. You get the message flight control degrade. An electrical bus left or right failure or electrical generator off message. Cabin systems and displays flickering or resetting. You would get an auto throttle disconnect, and you might even have a pressurization or ECS degradation. And the the ram air turbine, does not necessarily deploy unless there's a total power loss. And if that happens, then you get the rat. But if you have a partial electrical degradation, then the rat doesn't deploy, as was the case in the Dubai diversion.
Mm. So, what are the known facts now with this diversion, Richard?
Well, from India, we just have the technical issue
Yeah.
statement. It's factual, but very vague. And when you have an autopilot disconnect statement, that's certainly a plausible and reasonable trigger for a diversion.
Mm.
And losing the autopilot in cruise isn't an emergency in itself, but on a long haul flight with potentially challenging approaches at the destination, it's a legitimate reason to divert. And this sits in the credible possibility category, uh, but it hasn't been officially confirmed. And the multiple failures and degraded system statement might be speculation by the FIP and is currently unsupported by any official source or statement. And the claims of cascading system losses, autothrottle, ILS, flight directors, control system degradation, no auto land, come only from union sources repeated in the media. So, with no DGCA, Boeing, or maintenance confirmation from Air India, I think we have to treat these statements as unsubstantiated.
Mm. So, with all of that, what's your assessment, Richard?
Well, my assessment based on the available data as far as VTANC is concerned, a number of systems failed or degraded fits scenario A, an electrical issue. It could also fit scenario D, an issue with the flight computers or the avionics, and scenario F, a issue with the environmental CCS system. But 5 hours into a flight in the cruise phase fits A or F much better. So electrical, avionics, and not environmental. And a safe continuation after 3.5 hours on the ground fits A quite well, an
Mm.
electrical reset or a maintenance fix. And as far as VTANO is concerned, the recent RAT deployment fits also a scenario a power control system reliability issue. So, in summary, Air India, in my view, has a maintenance backlog problem on electrical and power control system issues, possibly affecting one or more EPCS channels or buses, which would cause autopilot disconnect and multiple degraded or failed systems.
Mm.
And as we mentioned, the FIP has called for the grounding of Air India Boeing 787 fleet until all open maintenance issues have been resolved.
Yeah, they have indeed. Fascinating. It doesn't paint a very good picture, does it?
No, and we'll see what other events occur in the next few weeks and months, but it doesn't
Mm.
paint a very good picture.
And of course, we're doing that deep dive back in a couple of years now, going back 3 years on the Air India fleet. And
Yeah,
that'll
we're
be
going,
very
yeah,
interesting to see what that turns up.
we're going to start that project, in fact, later today. And
Mm,
it'll be very interesting to see what that turns up. We're going to start with the crash aircraft going back 3 years and then extend it through the 787-8 fleet and then on to the Dash 9 and
mm.
maybe take it further into the A350 fleet and then into the narrow body fleet. But
And
we'll see how that goes.
and don't forget the 777 as well.
Indeed.
Mm. So look, Richard, thank you very much indeed for taking pushing your day off aside to do this deep dive into what's happening with this, because I'm sure the viewers will be very, very interested. And viewers, so thank you, Richard.
You're very welcome.
And viewers, we'll be back tomorrow with our deep dive into the media coverage of the 737 MAX and more broadly, the media coverage of aviation and some of the holistic dynamics that you may not be aware of what drives the media today and shapes the sort of coverage that you're getting and the sort of views that you're getting. I think you'll find it very, very interesting. So, as I said at the beginning, please subscribe to us, please like us, please keep those wonderful comments coming, those great questions. Really do appreciate them. And we do look forward to your company tomorrow. It'll be Sunday night or Sunday morning, wherever you are in the world. And please enjoy the rest of the weekend. Take care.